Welcome to the Super Healthy Human podcast with Dr. Rodger Murphree.
Welcome. Hi, I'm Dr. Rodger Murphree. I'm delighted that you're joining me. I'm going to share some information that I think will be really helpful in your quest to get healthy and stay healthy. For the last 34 years, I can't believe I've been in practice 34 years, 25 years specializing in functional medicine and a condition called fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, working with patients all over the world doing telemedicine over the last 10 years, I guess. These are the protocols that I have used to help thousands of patients over the last 3 decades. And I want to share them with you. I'm going to keep it really simple and try to just share information, the same information that I share with my patients to allow them to get healthy and to stay healthy. It doesn't matter what you're dealing with, what your health problem is. And I have shared this so many times with my patients over the years, is that the only way to overcome your symptoms, your chronic health issues, is to get healthy. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about type 2 diabetes or type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's, or we're talking about chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia or mold toxicity or autoimmune disease. It doesn't matter. The only way to overcome your chronic condition, chronic unwanted health condition, is to get healthy. Now, I know that sounds very simplistic, and it is. It's really pretty complicated because everyone's problem is different. We're as different on the inside as we are on the outside. And so it really is part of the challenges of finding out where you're broken down, doing some detective work, and then figuring out, okay, what do we need to change to correct the underlying issue? So much of modern medicine, unfortunately, conventional modern medicine, is based on treating symptoms. And there's certainly a time and a place for that. Thank goodness we have modern medicine. We have antibiotics when we have a raging strep infection or something worse than that. We have steroids to help with inflammation. We have insulin. We have all kind of things to help us manage symptoms. But for those of you that are dealing with a chronic health issue, it's really not about managing those symptoms. It's about finding out what's the underlying cause and treating the underlying issues. And again, everyone's a little bit different, but one of the places you have to start is changing your diet, getting a healthy diet, because this is something that you do every day, right? Every day you're taking in food and you're putting it in your body. So you're taking the outside world and you're putting it inside you. And this food stuff that you bring into your body, it's got all kind of chemicals. If it's processed foods, it's going to have all kind of chemicals, additives, preservatives, fungicides, pesticides, whatever it is. It's also going to have viruses and bacteria and fungi and all kind of things that come into our bodies. Fortunately, though, our bodies are so incredible in their ability to recognize foreign invaders and to to shut those down pretty quickly as they get into our bodies. We have an immune system that, 70% of our immune system is in our intestinal tract. It's the largest part of our immune system, and the reason why is because, again, the things that we come in contact with from the outside world, mainly the foods that we eat, the beverages that we put in our diet, they have to be guarded against, because if not, if we didn't have our immune system being part of our intestinal tract, we would, every time we'd eat, we would probably fall over dead, or eventually we would, certainly. And so you can't get healthy without eating healthy. You can't stay healthy without eating healthy. That doesn't mean that you have to eat, super clean every day, every meal, all day long. No, it doesn't mean that. I mean, that's not reality. But what you can do is put a focus on the majority of your time. You want to be eating things that are going to allow your body to function at optimal levels. I hear from my patients, a lot of times I hear what their diet is in the intake form, and when they're setting up a new patient consult, and I look at their history and I see, what they share with me, what they're eating for throughout the day. And, in the morning, they're eating cereal and toasted flakes, or they're eating Pop-Tarts or, and then for lunch, they're eating potato chips and a sandwich, and for dinner, they're eating whatever whatever they can get. And you do that all day long, your body is under assault all day long, trying to rid itself of these foreign chemicals that it's not used to. And so many people, they feed their pets healthier than they feed themselves. I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but a lot of times we're more picky about what we feed our dog or a cat, or certainly, our horses. If you have a thoroughbred horse, you're very particular about the fuel, about the food you put into that individual. But we kind of, for whatever reason, whether it's convenience or being laissez-faire or just ignorance, we just don't know. And that's a big challenge too, right? There's so many people, so many different diets out there. People are telling you what's healthy and what's not, and who do you believe? So hopefully you're going to gain some information backed up on science. All this information is validated through scientific studies and clinical proof, and they're in my books as well, my heart disease book as well as my fibromyalgia book. So I want to share with you just some simple things that you can do that will eventually dramatically improve your health, your skin, your nails, your hair, your organs, your energy, the things that you want to improve, not only the way that you feel, but also how you look, as well as protect you from all the nasty things that are out there, decrease your risk of certain nasties like heart disease and heart attack, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, these conditions that are so associated with poor diet and inflammation, which is a big driver. I think really being in practice for 34 years and working with literally thousands of patients over those years, I've seen the two main drivers of poor health or stress and inflammation. And both of those are dictated largely by what we eat and how our lifestyle habits. So we're going to focus on diet. That's what we're going to focus on. So really, what I tell my patients, and I've worked with very, very complicated patients over the years. A lot of the patients I've worked with, their doctors didn't really know what to do with them, or unfortunately in conventional medicine, it was all about just here's another drug to mask your symptom. And again, what you really want to do is treat the underlying causes. Just sweeping up or mopping up the wet kitchen floor every time it rains, you're just treating the symptom. If the cause is a leak coming from your, a hole in the roof in your kitchen roof, the cause is the hole in the roof. It's not the water on the floor. It's not the rain. This is where you start. Now, the thing about diet is it takes a while to really notice a benefit. Unlike using nutraceuticals, high doses of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, essential fatty acids, herbals, those kind of things that I use all the time in functional medicine. And sometimes also, referring patients out to get on the right prescription medication. But unlike using nutraceuticals or pharmaceuticals, diet takes some time. It's the long game. It's not the short game. It's not going to just turn your symptoms around overnight. But without doing this, without laying this foundation, you're just going to be treating symptoms. You've got to change your diet to eat as healthy as you can. This is the standard American diet, the SAD diet, right? SAD American diet. This diet contributes to almost 700,000 deaths each year, and that's very conservative. Due to in each year in the U.S. due to nutrition, obesity-related diseases such as heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, but also things that are not even mentioned here: autoimmune disease, type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Eating certain foods creates inflammation, creates certain stress. We'll talk a little bit about oxidative stress that then causes the body really to start to break down, and you start to develop symptoms based on what's happening with your body. Chronic disease affects almost half of Americans. Nearly $1 out of every 5 in our economy goes towards health care, what we call disease care. We really need to be health care is care that focuses on how to get you healthy and stay healthy without pharmaceuticals, if possible. There's certainly a time and a place for that. But if you if you look at some of you are taking prescription medications, if you look at the potential side effects of those drugs, as I encourage my patients to do, you'll see that many of the drugs that you're taking have potential side effects. And oftentimes you are dealing with the side effects and you don't even realize it's coming from the medications that you're taking. Again, not to step on anybody's toes. There's certainly a time and a place, but we want to really focus on a holistic approach, really changing our diet, changing our lifestyle, doing the things that are going to set us up for long-term health. Um, Inflammatory foods are a real problem. This is something we all probably have dealt with. This is how I grew up. Until I was in my 20s, I didn't really know to eat healthy. When I got in my 20s and really got interested in health, then I changed my diet, and for the last 40 years, I've been eating incredibly healthy. Do I eat healthy every day? No. Probably even on my off days, probably eat healthier than most people, but having said that, um, you can make little changes that are habitual, things that you just make a change that you follow most of the time, and it's going to yield huge benefits. But one of the things we really want to talk about is getting these inflammatory chemicals out of your diet. Most everyone is dealing with some type of inflammatory condition, whether it's realized or not. It's just smoldering or it's a real problem. If you got an autoimmune disease like Reiter's, Sjogren's, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, MS, these are driven by inflammation. And what you certainly don't want to do is create any more inflammation than you already have with with these diseases. But most everyone has some form of unwanted inflammation, and we need inflammation. Inflammation is part of the life cycle, part of the healing cycle. But when it gets out of control, then the body starts to degenerate. And inflammation creates not only things that we can see on the outside, shrivel, wrinkles and gray hair and other problems like that, but it also creates internal problems for your body that can create pain and fatigue and brain fog and mood disorders and leaky gut and drive food allergies, and the list goes on and on. So one of the things I want to really encourage you to do is get hydrogenated oils out of your diet. It's an easy thing to do because now it's mandatory that they have to put that on the label. So if you see anything on the label, these in particular is going to be margarine and certain butters or man-made butters or meat products that have hydrogenated vegetable oils in them, those you want to get out of your diet. There's a study, and I've just had it in my brain because I was thinking about it earlier, that shows that just as little as 3% of trans fats, hydrogenated oil, increases your risk of death by something like 200%. And this is something that's in so many foods. So I want you to start to read labels and make sure you're not taking in any of these unwanted oils or fats. So toxic oils or fats include seed oils like corn oil, sunflower, safflower, cottonseed, soybean. These oils and fats are loaded with a certain essential fatty acid called omega-6. Now, essential fatty acids are acids that you have to get in your diet. Your body can't make them, and you have to get them or you'll die. So we do need omega-6, and you'll see that in the literature. However, the problem with most people is they're consuming way too many omega-6s and not enough of something that we're going to talk about here in just a minute called omega-3s. Omega-6s are needed, but when you get too much omega-6 compared to omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, now you skew this balance and you set up this chronic inflammation in your body. So we want to replace these toxic oils with oils that are healthy for you, like EVO, cold expressor virgin olive oil, or coconut oil, or avocado oil. These are the things that the body can use without generating inflammation, injury, and creating oxidative stress and problems that so many of us are dealing with. Butter, yes, please. Butter is healthy. Don't worry. Ghee, which is a form of butter, used a lot in Indian recipes. Lard. These are things that our great grandparents probably grew up with and didn't have the issues like we do. Heart disease and cancer, those were not something that we even talked about in the early 1900s. That was just something that didn't show up until we started making a lot of changes in our diet. We look at Americans living with diseases related to diet, obesity. I mean, we're looking at, this is probably a very conservative, these numbers are probably very conservative. We're looking at 80 million people, high blood pressure, 70, almost 70 million, diabetes, which this is definitely conservative because diabetes is exploding in this country. Consuming way too many carbohydrates, especially simple carbohydrates, day after day after day, sets you up for developing type 2 diabetes or type 3 diabetes, Alzheimer's, which scares me. I don't know about you. That's one of the scariest things to me is having Alzheimer's, where you just can't, you lose your memory, your mental clarity. One of the things I just enjoy so much is learning and being able to educate others, and I can't imagine having that compromise, but it's happening to so many people and so many of my patients, typically their spouses, not them, but their spouses, but heart disease, cancer, all associated with diet. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." It's so true. Again, it's not the quick answer, but it's definitely the long-term answer for chronic health issues. There's 3 types, of fat. So let's talk about those. I've already mentioned them previously. There's saturated fats, which are solid at room temperature, like butter, coconut oil, tallow or meat fat. These are solid at room temperature. Monosaturated oils like olive oil, canola oil, these are liquid at room temperature. And then we have polyunsaturated oils, which are the seed oils, corn, safflower, soybean. These are things that you want to steer clear of. We've been led to believe that saturated fats are not healthy. And that's why we had this whole thing with margarine and all this fake butter with hydrogenated oils in there. And the problem with those is that when you are eating those hydrogenated fats, it doesn't allow the good things to get in the cells and the bad things to get out. It doesn't allow the cell to be permeable. We're told that polyunsaturated oils are healthy for you, but when you look at the studies that show that those with arteriosclerosis, plaque in the arteries, it's not saturated fats, it's not monosaturated fats. In fact, monosaturated fats, the Mediterranean diet is based on this, shows that allows you to start to reverse arteriosclerosis and our heart disease risk. But polyunsaturated oils, when you look at the research, what they see in the studies is that that's what makes up most of the fat in the plaques clogging up the arteries. Not saturated fats, right? It's the polyunsaturated fats. Saturated fats are unhealthy. That's what we're told. That's not true. That is not true. There's no evidence that saturated fats are bad for health. We look at why saturated fats are so important because, as I mentioned earlier, the cell membranes, these cells, they need to be pliable, and the saturated fats are part of the cell membrane. They let the good things in and the bad things out. They also are incredible for bone health. They help with lower LPA, which is lipoprotein A, which is one of the markers for increased risk of heart disease. They help to protect the liver. They help with the lungs. They help your kidneys, your immune system. These essential fatty acids, they work together with saturated fats, and they help support the detoxification system. We're told that eating polyunsaturated fatty acids is unhealthy. I'm sorry, that is healthy. Excuse me. And some of that's true. Omega-3 fatty acids are healthy, and these come from fatty fish, seafood, eggs, grass-fed meat, flax seeds, algae, and walnuts. Omega-6 fatty acids, in some degree, they're healthy. We need them. So eating nuts and seeds and grains and beans are fine to a certain degree. But once you skew the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s, that's where you start to have a problem. So those of you that are not eating um, cold water fish, and I'm not a fish person, I'm not a seafood person, What I would encourage you to do is certainly switch over to grass-fed beef and free-range chicken and free-range eggs, which are loaded with essential fatty acid threes. Or if you not doing that, and really probably just as a safety measure, I think everyone should be taking fish oil, omega-3, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams a day. There's all kind of great resources out there, Nordic Naturals, there's Carlson, all kinds of great ones. We have one that I like that's on my in my store, omega-3, but you can find them anywhere. Make sure it's from someone you trust. Don't get compromised unhealthy omega, fish oil because then you're just putting toxins in your body. Make sure it's free of lead and mercury and other things that unfortunately are in our water systems now, especially farm raised fish. Those are loaded with toxins. You want to steer clear of those. If you're going to eat fish, it needs to be cold water, deep cold water, organic, deep sea fish. It doesn't need to be raised on in a farm where they're giving them grains because the grains are omega-6, and that can create problem. So look at this here. Omega-3 fatty acids reduce inflammation. They help with brain health. I don't know if you have any kids or maybe yourself, you're struggling with ADHD. If you are, one of the best things you can do, or if you have some family member is struggling with that, is to make sure you're taking DHA, which is in fish oil. So DHA is one of the oils in omega-3s. So it's EPA and DHA. You need both. But if you're struggling with a lot of brain health, brain function, mental clarity issues, you want to skew on making sure you're getting plenty of DHA as well as EPA. And there's different companies out there. Nordic Natural does a really good job with DHA, higher doses of DHA in their fish oil. Some of their ones that they have, and this is what I recommend to certainly recommend to my kids who have ADHD. Omega-6 fatty acids, yes, we need them. We do. So a little bit of grains is okay. But when you get too much omega-6 to omega-3, you start to create a problem. I think I have a slide, but I'm going to mention this so I don't forget. It used to be in the Paleolithic time, you've heard about eating the paleo diet, right? Which I think is a healthy diet. But we've heard that in the paleo times, it used to be that eating the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 was like 2 to 1 or 1 to 1. Now what we see in the SAD American diet, the standard American diet, is it is about 15 to 1, 15 times the amount of omega-6 to omega-3s. If you have an autoimmune disease, it's going to be 20 or higher, 20 times the amount of omega-6 to omega-3s. That's the recipe for chronic inflammation, where the immune system is attacking the body and driving inflammation, whether it's MS, Sjogren's, Reiter's, rheumatoid, whatever, lupus. You really want to change this relation. So one of the things you want to do is, number one, get rid of grains. You don't need to eat a lot of grains, in particular a lot of wheat, soy, barley, oats, those kind of things. You want to get those out of your diet. And again, a little bit's okay for most people, but you want to really start to change this ratio and try to get more omega-3s to dramatically reduce inflammation that so many of us are dealing with. Free-range chickens. Now, chickens are not supposed to be eating grain. That's not what they eat. They don't eat soy. They they don't eat corn. That's not what they eat. They eat bugs and critters and all this other stuff out in the grass, and that allows them to build up omega-3 and become healthy. If you're eating farm raised, industrial raised chicken that are housed in these chicken coops and they're force fed, fattened up, and in 3 months they're sent to be slaughtered because they fattened up on grains. That's incredibly unhealthy, and just think about what that chicken is going through. Think about all the toxins that are being generated from the stress of that chicken being captive in these giant feed barns, whatever you want to call them, feed houses, where they're all smashed together. They can't even move. They're just there eating all day long. That's not healthy. That's not a food source you want to partake of. You want to make sure you're eating grass-fed, free-range eggs as well. And you'll see it when you'll pay a little bit more, not a whole lot more, but you'll see when the eggs, when you when you go to get those that are when they're grass-fed, free range, the eggs are gonna be loaded with EPA and DHA. That's the omega-3s, and that's what you wanna be eating. And you certainly want your kids to have these good essential fatty acids because it develops good brain health. What about cattle? Well, cattle are not supposed to be eating grains that are force fed to them. They're not supposed to be eating corn and soy and Skittles. Believe it or not, they give the cattle Skittles and other things to fatten them up. That's not healthy. Cattle are supposed to be out grass fed is what their digestive systems, their body is set up for. And when you force feed them with all these grains, corn and soy and these other things, you're causing that food source to be saturated with omega 6s. And every time you're eating these industrial farmed cattle, you're saturating yourself with inflammatory omega-6 oils and chemicals. Not to mention, again, if you're eating your food source is coming from a big giant food lot where the cattle never get out, they never exercise, they don't do anything but are in a pen all day long. That's the recipe for generating cancer and other things inside the cattle. And that's why they're all fed antibiotics and steroids and other things to help prevent that. They're given steroids to pump them up, and they're giving them hormones to make them fatter. They're given antibiotics because they're developing all these chronic diseases because cows, just like people, are not meant to be cooped up in a pen all day long where they can't even move. All they do is eat all day long. That's not healthy. So you want to really change your diet. And the great thing now is, I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we started eating grass-fed chicken, or free-range chicken and grass-fed beef, it was hard to find. But now you can go into Walmart. I just got back from all this. Well, I'm in this very t-shirt because I didn't have time to change. But you can get grass-fed cattle and grass-fed beef and free-range chicken products at Aldi and Target and certainly Whole Foods, Walmart, for heaven's sakes. So it's much more available than it ever was. There's really no excuse. Yeah, you're gonna pay a little bit more, but would you want to make sure you're eating as healthy as you can so you don't have to deal with a chronic health issue 5, 10 years from now because your diet has just set you up to be predisposed from problems that you could have changed just by changing your diet? Red meat. There's nothing wrong with red meat. Don't let people discourage you as long as it's grass-fed. If it's grass-fed, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not associated with heart disease. The reason why people talk about it being associated with heart disease mainly is because of cholesterol. Cholesterol is not the villain. Don't worry about cholesterol. If your cholesterol is below 240, don't worry about it. If you have familial high cholesterol, meaning that it runs in your family, it's 300, some patients it's 400. I mean, it's really high. That can be a problem. But until it gets above 240, I certainly wouldn't worry about it. You need cholesterol. Cholesterol is actually an antioxidant. The more stress you get under, the more cholesterol is being released in your body. 85% of the cholesterol in your body is being produced by your body. Only 15% is impacted by the foods that you eat. Having said that, you need cholesterol. Cholesterol is the building block that makes certain hormones. Let's see if I've got, here they are. So once you start to reduce your cholesterol intake or you start to take a Crestor or a statin medication, what you start to see, now you start to sabotage your body's ability to make hormones that you need to feel good and look good, like pregnenolone or progesterone or DHEA or estradiol, estrogen, right? Testosterone, cortisol. These are super important hormones. So many people they get middle age and stress, perimenopause and menopause, they're already low. So they start to feel run down and tired. They lose their libido. Men in particular, once they get their testosterone low, once their cholesterol goes below 150, then they increase their rate of suicidal risk by fourfold, 400 times. You need these hormones, and they come from the building block of cholesterol. Once you start to sabotage the production of cholesterol, you can't make these hormones. Then you start to develop a lot of problems. If we look at the studies that have been bantered around, the Framingham study, the study from Ansel Keys that were in the 1960s, those studies have been butchered. If you really read them, and I go into much detail, and I detail everything footnoted from the Journal of American Medical Association, from the Lancet, the British Medical Journal, I put those footnotes in there showing you the studies that actually show, as this one does from JAMA, that for each 1% milligram per deciliter drop of cholesterol, there's an 11% increase in coronary and total mortality. You probably have not ever heard that. So if you've not read my Heart Disease, What Your Doctor Won't Tell You, I encourage you to get a copy of that book. It's a little dated, I'll tell you that. I hadn't done a reprint in a while, but it's still relevant today. Cholesterol is not a villain. You need cholesterol. Cholesterol is important. And once you start to reduce your cholesterol with medication, you can get in a lot of problems. What about milk? This is another thing. I want you to give up milk. Milk is for 400-pound cattle or 500-pound calf, cattle, a calf. They're not for people. This is not something we should be drinking. This is for a baby calf, and it's got hormones in there that are not conducive to our health. The milk, yeah, it's got protein in it, but you know what else it has? It's mainly sugar. It has fat, yeah, fat, and actually the fat's probably the thing is fine. But milk from cattle is associated with all kind of autoimmune disease, including multiple sclerosis, and in particular, type 1 juvenile diabetes. But it can cause weight gain, bloating, reflux, gas, allergies, eczemas. Believe it or not, drinking milk does not build bone, actually can weaken your bones. Here it is, the average glass of milk has 60 different hormones in it. There's more sugar in milk, 13 grams, than there is in protein or fat. This is not a health food. Now, if you want to have a little bit of half and half or a little bit of cream of your coffee, that's fine. What I want to encourage you to do is don't be drinking milk, and certainly don't be recommending your kids drink milk on a daily basis. Something like 70% of the people in the world, in particular those who are African American descent or from Africa, do not possess the enzymes to break down the lactose in there. They don't have the lactase in there, the enzyme to break down the milk sugar, and that creates all sorts of intestinal problems. This is not a health food. This has been pushed. This is propaganda. Get the milk out of your diet. Again, a little bit to cook with, or a little bit in your coffee or your tea, if that's something that you do, fine. But you don't want to be drinking milk. That is not healthy. Countries with the lowest milk consumption also have the lowest rates of osteoporosis, bone weakening, and fractures, while those with the highest dairy intake have the highest rate of osteoporosis. Now, what about dairy? What about cheese? I think for the most part, people can do okay with a little bit of cheese. It is a mucus producer, so it creates a lot of mucus, so you can get a lot of postnasal drip or sinus congestion. For those of you with breathing problems like asthma or COPD, it can create problems. At the first sign of some type of cold or flu or upper respiratory infection, you definitely need to go off dairy. But a little dairy is probably okay. Having said that, one of the things I would encourage you to do is to do an elimination diet. On an elimination diet, you would go off certain foods to see if they may be giving you some symptoms. And the basic elimination diet that I recommend in my books is go off all grains, all wheat, all barley, all spelt millet. Get all the gluten out of your diet. Go off all sugar, go off soy, go off corn, go off citrus, go off dairy, go off nightshades. Nightshades are eggplant, uh, potatoes, white potatoes, red potatoes, tomatoes. Go off those for a month and then add them back one at a time every 3 days to see if you have a reaction. Some of those you're not going to have any reaction, that's fine. But for some of you, you're going to add back one of those food groups and it's going to cause bloating or gas or indigestion, stomach pain, headaches, fatigue. Something's not going to be right. And you want to go off that food for another 4 weeks and then add it back and see if it is a problem. If it's just a mild reaction, go off of it for a couple weeks and then try it again and see. For those that are not giving you an issue, then, then you can put them back in your diet. But uh, elimination diet is something that I recommend all my patients do. We've talked a little bit about saturated fats, but let me just bring this home. Let me bring it home because so many people are told, oh, don't eat butter. Oh, don't eat eggs. Oh, don't eat meat. No, I'm telling you, it's fine. If you look at, there's more than certain studies, so this is one of them, more than 600,000 people in 19 countries found no link between saturated fat and heart disease. Another study involving 135,000 people in 5 continents over 10 years showed that eating saturated fat actually lowered heart disease risk. This is not stuff you hear about, right? Talked about trans fats. The problem with fried foods is they're fried using seed oils, canola oil, safflower oil, these things, and they generate trans fats. Steer clear of fried foods. That's something to say. You got air fryers now. You can do all kinds of things where you don't have to put these foods, dip them in seed oils and create a toxic food that you're putting in your body. Steer clear of those foods. Trans fats make up 3 to 7% of all total fat in dairy products, such as milk and cheese. 3 to 10% in beef and lamb, and just point and 2% in chicken and pork. Artificial trans fats, these are things that again comes from these seed oils. So you want to steer clear of that. A little bit, you're going to get a little bit of trans fats in the foods that you eat. That's okay. But once you start eating a lot of processed foods, that's where you can create a lot of problems. Saturated fats versus trans fats. We already talked a little bit about this, but you can see that trans fats interfere with healthy function, interfere with hormone production. They encourage inflammation. They actually raise this unhealthy cholesterol, the LPA. They reduce levels in omega-3s, actually suppress omega-3s, which are anti-inflammatory, so not a good thing. They inhibit insulin receptors, so they increase the risk of diabetes. They depress the immune system, and they depress production of prostaglandins, which help the body have homeostasis, to have a balance. So you want to steer clear of these things, and mainly you do that. Avoid fried foods, avoid polyunsaturated fats, get those out of your diet. Look at labels and see if they have hydrogenated oils in there. Most processed foods will have hydrogenated oils in them. And you can just see there's a whole list here. Just name an unwanted health condition, and hydrogenated trans fats are part of that. And the reason why it doesn't allow, again, it doesn't allow the cells to be able to get the bad stuff out and the good stuff out. It's like a barrier. It's this circular, like a rubber band around the cell. It's not pliable. There's the word I was trying to think of. It's not pliable. And because of that, it doesn't allow the cell to be able to function in a healthy way. So avoid vegetables. We've already talked about that. Again, we won't go into too more detail, but again, this is where you see them. So fried fast foods such as fried chicken, battered fish, hamburgers, French fries, etc. These have these hydrogenated oils in there. So do baked goods. So you want to steer clear of those. Best oils to cook with. Now, olive oil. So what's a smoke point? A smoke point is where you can heat the pan up until it starts to smoke. Once it starts to smoke, it's generating potentially toxic, unhealthy carcinogens. Regular olive oil, cold press, espresso olive oil, EVO, virgin olive oil is good to cook with at lower temperatures. It's good to put on your salads. Uh, that use is fine. But if you're going to be cooking with olive oil, then you want to use light olive oil. It has a higher smoke point. Or coconut oil or ghee, clarified butter. These are the things that will allow you to cook at a higher temperature and not get carcinogens being produced from the oil. And these are available any grocery store. You can get coconut oil, get organic coconut oil or get light olive oil, but certainly get expeller press virgin olive oil to use. So coconut oil, sugar. Sugar is an incredible disease generating food. It generates inflammation is a big thing. It's one thing. It also suppresses your immune system. 2 tablespoons of sugar will decrease your immune system by 50% for 4 hours. Anytime you are facing, got a cold coming on or flu or some type of infection, your immune system's compromised for whatever reason, you want to get off the sugar. No fruit juice, no sugary things. You want to steer clear of that. The U.S. government says that the average American consumes 152 pounds of sugar a year. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's 152 pounds of inflammation in your cells. That's just not a healthy thing to do. And you see that 20% of our daily calories come from sugary beverages. I see this, over the years working. I wrote a book called Treating and Beating Anxiety and Depression with orthomolecular medicine. And one of the things I talked about in there was ADHD. And one of the big drivers of that condition I found was excess uh, sugar, and particularly sugary drinks. And we see that these uh, teenagers in particular, they may drink 3 or 4 of these a day, and by doing so, females, these are teenagers, they increase their risk of a hip fracture, so bone fracture, by some 300%. And we see the big reason for that, drinking these sodas, is the sugar causing inflammation, but it's also the phosphorus that's in there. It pulls calcium out of the bone and makes the bones brittle. Does that set them up for later in life as an adult developing osteoporosis? I think it does. Almost 75% of packaged foods in supermarkets have added sugar. Please, one of the things you want to do is try to do your best to eat real food. When you go in the grocery store, you want to shop on the outside aisles. Steer clear of everything in the center. The orange Gatorade and the blue Powerade and all this stuff that's processed. That's not real food. When you look at a package and it's got the label on there shows the ingredients and it's 30 different ingredients, you don't even recognize what's in there. That's not real food. Can you eat frozen vegetables? Yeah, they're actually just as healthy and sometimes even more healthy than fresh because the nutrients are locked in. But don't eat processed foods that have a label with, 30 different ingredients. Try to steer clear on the outside where you're eating vegetables, a little bit of fruit. Now, fruit is a sugar. It's fructose. A little bit is fine because when you eat the fruit, the fiber in there slows down the absorption of the sugar. So it's not as bad. But when you're eating when you're drinking a Coke, you're mainlining sugar. When you're eating sweets, you're mainlining that sugar and it creates problems, especially high fructose corn syrup, which the liver cannot break down. It has to just store it. So because of that, you can't use that sugar unless you're running a marathon or doing something very active right away. High fructose corn syrup cannot be broken down and used. If it's not used right away, it causes the liver to develop fatty deposits. And pretty soon, not only are you gaining weight, but now you're developing a thing called fatty liver, which is really endemic. It's a terrible problem in the United States right now. We're seeing a lot of people with hepatic disorder who have um, alcoholic fatty liver disease, and that can create all sorts of problems. One of those being liver cancer, but uh, other sources of inflammation. So simple carbohydrates. I can't go into detail about that. You can Google that. You can get a list of that. But basically, simple carbohydrates are certain fruits because they break down really quickly. Fruit juice. You shouldn't be drinking fruit juice. If you want to have a smoothie, put a little bit of juice in there and the rest of veggies, but don't be drinking fruit juice. Fruit juice is not really healthy for you. It's like mainlining sugar. If you take this 4 oranges to make that glass of orange juice and you tried to eat those, you'd be full pretty quickly, but because of all the fiber and the nutrients that are in there. But if you take those 4 oranges and you squeeze them in a glass and you drink that, you don't get the fiber, but you get all the sugar. There's no protein, there's no fat. Fat is actually healthy. If it's healthy fat, I've spent a lot of time already on that. Fat slows down the absorption rate of carbohydrates, and you need fat. Fat's really important, as you saw earlier. The mitochondria burns excess glucose when you're eating all this sugar. High glucose, high sugar, high fructose contributes to insulin resistance, creates weight gain and inflammation. What we put in our mouths can be a huge driver of inflammation. It certainly is, and damages our cells and immune system. Sugar blues. This is what's associated with eating sugar. Is a little bit of sugar fine? Yes, please enjoy yourself periodically. What gets people in trouble is, oh, I just need a little something today. And before you know it, they've eaten 4 or 5 cookies, after lunch, they've eaten, some ice cream. It's this daily habitual sugar intake, and it's this daily habitual processed food, packaged foods that you're not even aware of that's loaded with sugar that starts to create damage in your body. And here are the things associated with sugar, one of the most toxic chemicals we have known to man: inflammation, weight gain, atherosclerosis, so cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high blood fats, fatty liver. By the way, when your doctor tells you got elevated triglycerides, elevated blood fats, it's not the fat that you're eating. That's not the problem. It's the sugar that creates the problem with your lipid panel, with your triglycerides. Increased risk of heart attack, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. Please dramatically reduce your sugar intake. Please. Fructose, already talked about that. Unlike glucose, unlike table sugar, which can be used by the cell, fructose is processed by the liver. And if you can't use it right away, it is stored as a fatty deposit. It also generates high cholesterol. So it's not the fat, they're telling you, it's the fructose, the corn syrup, these things that we have that can create creating these problems. Keep simple carbohydrates to a minimum. And again, I don't have time. I don't have a list, or maybe I do. We'll see if I have a list here. I'm not sure what all slides I have in here. But you can Google to see what is a simple carbohydrate, what is a complex carbohydrate. Simple carbohydrate, your body, it turns into sugar really quickly. A complex carbohydrate, it takes a while to break down. It doesn't spike. It doesn't cause your body to release insulin and spike your blood pressure. So that's what you want to look for. Now, the other thing you want to look for, you can Google this, look at your glycemic load. So many people who are type 2 diabetes they're told to look at the glycemic index, how a certain food will raise your blood sugar, but certain foods may be frowned upon in the glycemic index, like watermelon. They say it's a simple sugar. However, it's mostly water. You could eat a big plate of watermelon and you're not going to raise your sugar. Okay, so look at the glycemic load. Look that up. Google that. I need to do a whole presentation on that. It's going to be in my next book. Look at the glycemic load. That's what you want to pay attention to in the foods that you're eating. Fruits, a little bit are fine, but fruits are a sugar. So a little bit is okay. I want to encourage you to be careful about the fruits that you choose. These right here, again, the glycemic load is low, so you can get away with eating these and not really create a problem. Other fruits like bananas are like mainlining sugar right away, okay? We already talked about fruit juice. That's something I frown upon. And this is something that changes every year. This is an older slide, obviously. You can see it's kind of dated. But you can go to the environmental working group and you can see what's the dirty dozen. Now, what's the dirty dozen? The dirty dozen are foods that have the most potential for toxic ingredients, pesticides, fungicides, those kind of things. Any kind of berry, blueberries, strawberries, peaches are on here. Yes. Grapes. These are things because the reason why they're on here is because they're so highly processed. So you want to steer clear of these. Now, again, this changes every year. So you want to look at this. Okay. But this is the Clean 15, same group, the environmental working group. And these are foods that you can eat and feel pretty good about that they're not treated with a lot of pesticides and fungicides and these kind of things. Corn, we got to be careful of GMO, right? Genetically modified. So, we want to pay attention to that. But you will see that sometimes it doesn't matter if you're eating organic. I encourage you to eat organic as much as you can, but certainly pay attention to the Dirty Dozen list in 2000, this year, and look at the Clean 15. So it doesn't really matter about, things like broccoli and asparagus and things that you peel, right? Like an avocado, it's got a peel on there, papayas. It really doesn't matter so much. So these are things that you don't have to be so conscious of them being organic. But the rest of the time, I really want to encourage you to try to eat organic. The studies show that organic foods have more nutrients, they're more nutrient dense, and obviously, they don't have any potential harmful ingredients in there, like something that's been treated with pesticides and cancer-causing fungicides. Vegetables, really, I think your plate should be two-thirds veggies and a third of a protein of your choice. For most people, I think you need animal protein. It's hard to get enough protein eating vegan, so eating tofu, eating beans and nuts and those kind of things. I think it's hard to get all the amino acids that your body needs. Amino acids are the building blocks of a protein. When you eat animal protein, you're going to get them all. When you're a vegan, it's hard to get that combination. And a lot of times, and I've seen this over the years, are deficient in these amino acids that they need and that can create unwanted problems. Avoid these. So avoid agave, high fructose corn syrup, brown rice syrup, cane juice or syrup, maple syrup, sugar, evaporated cane juice, fructose, dextrose, maltose, or sucrose. These are all sugar. They're just other names for sugar. Now, again, a little bit goes a long way. Okay, so some is okay every now and then, but you certainly don't want to be pouring this into your cup of coffee in the morning. You don't want to be sprinkling this all over your food, and you certainly don't want to be drinking drinks that are loaded with these things. These artificial sweeteners, steer clear of NutraSweet. It's got more complaints about NutraSweet than probably any other chemical out on the market. It's associated with neurotoxicity, can cause neuropathy, like sciatic pain, trigeminal neuralgia, facial ticks and tremors. It's not brain fog, anxiety, depression. You don't want to be taking in NutraSweet. Splenda can suppress your thymus gland, so it can suppress your immune system. So, and also can suppress the secretory IgA in your intestinal tract, so it lowers your immune function. So you want to steer clear of that. Sweet and low in large quantities has been associated with cancer. Otherwise, it's probably okay. But even that, if you got an option, and you're seeing this more and more when you go get your coffee or whatever it is, or even to cook with. Now you can get stevia to cook with. You can get it just if you're baking something, use stevia. This is an all natural substance, doesn't raise your blood sugar, doesn't create inflammation, doesn't have any of the baggage that sugar has. This is what I recommend to my patients. This is xylitol. Monk fruit is another one that is okay in small quantities as well. These are just some of my patients who, part of getting them well was getting on the right nutraceuticals, over-the-counter supplements, the right protocols, fixing the underlying issues, but also getting them on the right diet. Many of my patients were bedridden for years, and because of that, they had gained a lot of weight. Their metabolism was sabotaged, and so one of the things we had to do is get them on the right diet. What I'm sharing with you, they needed some of them needed some help along with just the diet. If you're carrying around extra weight, you're storing inflammatory chemicals because those fat cells, those adipose cells, are not just sitting there dormant. It's not just the belly fat sitting there. It's actually generating inflammation. It increases your risk of heart attack, stroke, cancers, type 3 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, all the nasty things we do not want. You need to lose those fat cells. And if you need help doing that, as not all my patients, but a lot of them did, because these fat cells were creating inflammation. And if you're carrying around, 30, 40 extra pounds, it'd be like carrying a 3-year-old on your back all day. That's exhausting. That's exhausting. Your heart has to pump every minute through 60 miles of arteries and veins. for every 1 pound of fat that you have, unhealthy fat, you have an additional 10 miles of arteries and veins that has to be nourished. So it's exhausting. It's exhausting mentally and physically, as well as creating the risk of certain diseases that none of us want. So again, these are patients that I use not only diet, but also nutraceuticals. If that's something that you are interested in, you can certainly see my fibromyalgia book, my heart disease book, and set up a consult. I'll be happy to help you if you're having a chronic issue and see if we can't get you over that. But these I got bunches of them. This is the weight loss program. These are these anti-inflammatory weight loss drops, and they suppress appetite. They also increase, so they suppress um, um, hunger hormones, ghrelin, which your ghrelin goes up. And the more fat cells you have, the more ghrelin you have, which your cells are always hungry. And you never can satisfy them, even if you try to. Um, it suppresses ghrelin, so it suppresses your appetite, and it also raises your leptin levels. Leptin is a hormone, it's your satiation hormone. The higher your leptin levels, the less food you need to feel satiated. As you gain more and more weight, it desensitizes your body to leptin. So a lot of times you eat and you feel like I'm still not full, I need something else. This is also part of what drives sugar cravings and salt cravings to where even you eat and you say, "What do I eat after I eat dinner?" You should eat dinner and that's it. I mean, that's it. That should be it. So these are the hormones how this works. There's two different drops. They're all natural. They can be taken by anybody, but typically my patients lose about half a pound a day on these, and they just use an all natural diet that comes with it. It's just a healthy diet that I've shared with you. It's a very simple diet. There's no exercise needed. There's no prepackaged foods. There's no prepackaged shakes. There's no weigh-ins, phone calls, office visits, no potentially dangerous shots or prescription drugs used. It's just an all-natural process that I've been using for the last decade or more. So if you go to 2 Transform Health, they tell you how this diet works. There's a short little video where I explain how the diet works. You can see a bunch of testimonials on there. If you go to the store, if you go to, that's the wrong one. If you go to yourfibrodoctor.com or superhealthyhuman.com, you can see there's a store. Some of the things that I've talked about, omega-3 fatty acids is on there. But you can also go to Your Fibro Doctor and you can click on Patient Center at the top, and you can go to Health Conditions, and you can see, here's what I recommend for ADHD. Here's what I recommend for anxiety and depression. So these are articles that I wrote for different peer review magazines, and we put them in here, and they talk about the protocols that are in there. So I just wanted to share that with you. So someone is sharing that Alzheimer's can be helped oftentimes with dietary changes. That's so true. What about organic grass-fed natural yogurt? Yes, please. Those are great for your microbiome. Highly recommend natural yogurt and kefir, fermented foods. Those are really good. Olives are really good. Sauerkraut, great for your microbiome. Even sourdough bread, and a little bit goes a long way again, because I think most people need to steer clear of grains, although sourdough is probably the least potentially harmful of the wheat products. So these are some things, definitely these are some good observations. Okay. So I'm going to wrap things up unless there's any other questions. I'm going to wrap things up. I'll be back next week. And next week, I'm going to be talking about how to dramatically increase your mental and your physical energy. We're going to talk some more a little bit about diet, but we're also going to talk about adrenal fatigue and low thyroid, and balancing your hormones, including your happy hormones like dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine, and many of those hormones that people don't even talk about when they're talking about mental energy or physical energy. We're going to look at some things that may be sabotaging you through oxidative stress affecting your mitochondria, which are the power plants of the cells, and how just certain things you could add in your diet that are so readily available that you can do that will make a difference in how you feel, how you think, how you look, and how you can navigate all the challenges of aging. So I'm going to share that with you next week. In the meantime, please check out my website. There's a lot of free resources, as you saw, 2 different ones, fibrodoctor.com, and that's obviously mainly um, targeting the information that targets stuff that those with fibromyalgia would be interested in. There's all kind of free resources there, videos and blogs and interviews and etc. The other one is superhealthyhuman.com, and that one's a little bit more broad. So it goes into not only certainly fibromyalgia is in there as well, but more about heart disease and anxiety and depression, natural protocols for those things, using functional medicine, the way that I practice telemedicine. I work with patients all over the world. If you're interested in consults, I took a break for the last 9 months, and now I'm slowly adding back some days where I'm taking patients, new patients, and spending time with them. We spend an hour together on that new patient, Zoom or telephone, depending on what you're comfortable with. And if that's something interested, you can see how to set up a consult at yourfibrodoctor.com or at superhealthyhuman.com. You can see how you can fill out the paperwork and we can get in touch with you and we set up a consult. I had a blast. This is so fun. I love doing this. So I hope this was beneficial to you, and I look forward to meeting some of you personally in a new patient consult sometime in the future.
Thanks for listening to Super Healthy Human with Dr. Rodger Murphree. Remember, your body is designed to heal. It just needs the right tools. Stay curious. Stay consistent. Stay super healthy. If this episode helped you, leave a review or share it with someone who's ready to take charge of their health. The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your physician before making changes to your health regimen. This content does not substitute medical care.